Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Golf Podcast. Mike, who doesn't want to drop more mid-range putts?
Yeah, man, seriously.
I mean, that's where the score starts to
Key to
happen.
scoring, yep.
So I'm excited to talk about that, but even more excited to say happy golf season, man.
It's here. It's definitely here.
Finally. I mean, it's been a long couple of months of saying, like, I can't wait for it, and it's finally here. You know, I feel like the Masters is always that kickoff. So, you know, we see that, but also we're actually getting out there. We're finally playing a little bit. We've got a round booked at Skyway. We've got some other things. You played a little bit. I played a little bit. I want to talk about those experiences, talk about a little bit of the recent putting lesson we had with Kevin Sprecher and how that's going to play into today's topic. We're going to talk about those mid-range putts, but also just generally the progression of the game, where things are going. But another thing I want to do, talk about, you know, people getting out there and starting to play. The ShotScope leaderboard's starting to light up,
They
huh?
are heating up, man. It's so cool to see this.
Yeah. Who we got on there?
So I have the leaderboard up now, and I went right to short game leaderboard. And first of all, there's 149 people on the list. Okay. And we got D Bushy. Listen to this. He's a 21 handicap. I hope he was working his pin collect right. So proximity 6 feet in one round.
Wow.
So either he was throwing darts that day, but here's one that's I think even more impressive. The guy in the second slot, A. Turnbow. Hope I'm saying that right. He's a 6 handicap. He has 20 rounds under his belt. This is all time, actually. If I look at this year, he's got 6 under his belt this year, and he's 6.66 feet in proximity over those 6 rounds. So he's definitely lights out. I love seeing that. I love seeing all these names. It's really cool, really heating up. Let me give you one more real quick because we got the medals, Frank.
Yeah.
So we have a leaderboard for medals, and the medals earn you points. So this year we've got D Fleming. I think he's from the UK, 26 rounds under his belt this year, and he's got 5,490 points. Dude, he's way ahead of the guy in second, G Reed, at 3,940. I love seeing this competition, man.
It's so cool. And I like seeing my name way down on the list.
Way at the bottom.
Speaking of which, I'm an 89th for medals, so I better get my work in. But speaking of putting, yeah, there's some I've been trying to chase those putting stats, so it is fun. It's fun getting on that leaderboard and just kind of having those little like internal competitions, and we chat about them in the Facebook group. So guys, definitely check it out if you haven't had a chance to do so already.
You know, Frank, last week I played at a country club, and it was the first time I played golf without a video camera in 6 months.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure you experienced it yourself recently, and, you know, weird feeling, right? To just focus on the game and play.
It is. Unfortunately,
you had a different experience.
I have a lot of fun when we're out there video, you know,
Believe me, it's a blast.
It's a blast. We get to be creative and we get to share what we're doing, but there's no denying it takes you mentally out of the round a lot of times. I'm often finding myself more so thinking about, you know, what to film and what's going to be, you know, something I want to share, what's going to be exciting. And it just kind of takes you out of the round. So it is nice every once in a while to put things away and just get out there and play.
But you had a unique experience this past weekend.
I sure did. So you guys heard me talk about this maybe 2 episodes ago. I bought my daughter her first set of golf clubs. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see them right there. Look at the height difference, Mike.
There it is. Yeah, it's great. It's funny.
So I bought those for her, and she's starting to get really excited about the game. She's 5 years old. And we've been practicing putting. That's pretty much the extent of it, just putting in the house. But I've been really just kind of really invigorated by her energy towards the game and how excited she's been just to get out there and play. And it's really just added such a cool dynamic. It's funny because if I'm being 100% honest, there's a long time, the last couple of years when the kids have been very young, where it's just like, it works the other way. It's almost that they're preventing me in some ways from playing, not purposely, but they're young and it's, you know, it's a lot of work and it's hard to sometimes get a chance to get out there and play. Now it seems the pendulum is swinging the other way. And as she's getting interested and she wants to come out there with me, it's like, this is excellent. Like it has a new dynamic to the game, being able to share with her and bring her out there. So my father, he calls me up the other day and he's like, I got a Saturday tee time. If you want to join, I got a spot on the tee time, which is just, you know, like whatever magic to my ears, just in the fact that we're able to get out there and play again.
Right.
That it was just going to be warm enough. But he's like, I got a spot. And I'm like, okay, great. And then my daughter hears me say that, and she's like, can I play? And I'm like, I don't know. Let me ask him. And I call him back, and I'm like, is that cool if I bring her along? And he's just like, yeah, that's really your decision. It's just understand that it's going to be a little cold, because when we teed off, it was like 38, but
Right.
it's that time of year, warmed up to 60. But by the time we finished, but he's like, she can hit some shots. She's got to stay in the cart. We got to keep moving because it's a morning tee time. It just happens.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Long story short, I'm just kind of like, I'm excited, but I'm also like a little bit nervous. I'm like, is this kid going to be able to keep like her attention and hang?
Right. Yeah.
And dude, I have never been more proud than the fact of how much patience this kid had. I kept checking in, like we're at hole like 12, 14. We're going through. I'm like, are you good? You want to head home? Cause I was like, okay with, if we got even 9 in, I was like, good. And then whatever. She's just like, I don't want to leave. I want to stay. And I would, every once in a while, I'd let her hit one. We'd hit one off the tee, hit driver, she'd hit, and she was surprising me with how well she was striking the ball. And I'd let her putt here and there. And I couldn't believe like her attention span. And it made me very hopeful for, as she progresses, how well she's going to be able to excel in this game because of that level of patience and attention.
Yeah.
I mean, at 5 years old, to be able to spend 4 hours, there's like a 3.5 hour round out there, and a full 18, and just, it's not like she was, sitting there on the iPad or anything like that. She was in it. She was excited.
Yeah.
And I think right now my biggest goal for her is just to get her enjoying and excited about the game. I'm not an instructor. I'm not going to teach her certain things. I did talk to one of the pros there about getting her started with some group lessons, but I just wanted to get her excited. And I think that's what this is accomplishing. She's just having fun. She enjoyed it. So she's out there with me. She's out there with her grandfather. It was a really rewarding experience, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, I told you this when I saw you that, I mean, that was probably one of the greatest experiences for myself. I did it last summer when my daughter was 5. We did 9 holes, same, and she loved driving the cart.
Yes.
At 5 years old. So yeah, man, we just made it fun. I'm glad to see that. When you told me you played 18, I did not believe you that she hung around that long.
Yeah, she did.
And some of the shots are pretty amazing. So, I mean, that's pretty cool.
You know what else was great? I was sharing it kind of as I was going, a little bit on my story and stuff like that, but also a little bit in the Facebook group. And I thought it was so cool. A lot of guys in the Facebook group were kind of kicking in their stories about playing with their kids. And it just, look, it's another thing to love about this game. And just the fact that it's something you can do and you can share with kids at different ages. And there's obviously different levels of ability, but, it was just, like I said, it was just one of those things that was really a rewarding experience. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to try to commit myself to, on the weekends, I'm going to try to take her over to the range, like one morning on the weekends, and just get her out there and get her enjoying it and just see how it goes. We had an episode a while back where we talked about, kids and golf and how to get them involved. But I think it's something we'll want to readdress at some point, especially seeing how many people in the Facebook group have kids of their own who are getting involved at the game. So I think it's a good topic to cover for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that was good stuff. All right, other big things that we've got going on. We're going to be playing Skyway this week, which is a 9-hole track sandwiched right in the middle of Jersey City. It's right by the, New York City, and it's just got a great views of the skyline. I'm very excited for this one. Haven't played there. Yep, no. Same. So that's going to be an exciting one. Another thing that was really great was our recent lesson with Kevin Sprecher, our putting lesson. Hopefully you guys got a chance to check out that video. Lots of, as always, anytime we work with Kevin, it's just like lots of just gems that he just drops out there. And that's why those videos, we tend to make them a little bit longer than our normal course vlogs, because we like to just pack it with as much of that info as we can. It's just because it's invaluable stuff. So some of the stuff he showed us with putting, And it's really paying off. I'm working on my putting stroke and some of the stuff he showed me. I've got a lot more speed control, which is a really important part of what we're going to talk about in a few minutes with these mid-range putts. And the proof is in the pudding. My first round out there, and the greens are not in the greatest shape. They just opened last week, but I still managed to have 34 putts in that round. So I'm excited about where that's going to go. Obviously, there's still some getting used to. There's still sometimes it doesn't quite feel as comfortable as I'd like it to. That'll come with time. But what he did for my speed control, just by kind of doing that forward push, de-lofting the club and then hitting up a little bit on it and getting that nice roll, has just really worked wonders for me. So I'm excited about that. And I want to dive into this topic. But one thing I want to also talk about, we've seeing more and more that we've got a lot of new listeners to the show. We're seeing a lot of you who are coming to the show for the first time on some of the other like video channels that we're doing now. So just to give a quick background for anybody who's new, and we like to kind of disclaim this once in a while, our whole philosophy, and whenever we dive into these instruction topics, our whole philosophy is working to share things that we've learned with you guys so that hopefully you're able to learn something from it. We talk about this a lot. We're not pros. We're not instructors. We're normal hacks like you guys who are just out there trying to get better. In fact, I'm sure there's a whole bunch of you listening who could probably, beat us by quite a few strokes. But that's, the key really for me, and the overarching key of all of this is just getting out there and having fun. It's a game. None of us are, we're not pros. We're not on the tour. We're not getting paid to play on Sunday, so to speak. So it's all about having more fun. And I think just one part, it's certainly not the whole thing, but one part of having more fun is playing a little bit better. If you play the game a little bit better, you're able to enjoy it. It's a little bit less frustrating. There is the other side of that coin where I feel like sometimes just throw away the scorecard and just go out there and have a great time with your buddies, and it's like, I don't want to ever too much tie it to score, because I think that's where a lot of times people get frustrated. But if there's things that we can share here, if there's areas that we've had like a little bit of help here and there, shave a stroke here and there, and if that can help you guys and then you can have a little bit more fun with the game, then that's the most rewarding thing to me. And I'm like, that our job is accomplished, right? So I want to, every once in a while, I like to just dive into that and let you guys know, especially to kind of initiate some of our newer listeners and let you know what our philosophy is on the whole thing. So I'll tell you what, unless you have anything else you want to jump in with, you want to dive into the topic a little bit?
Yeah, I want to do that. And before we do that, we got to do some ad reads. But before we do that, real quick, I want to do a calendar update because I'm too excited. We haven't shared this in a while. You mentioned Skyway this Friday. Next week, we're playing what I call mystery course, because that's coming. We don't know what it's going to be or where we're going to be. The week after, we're at Atlantic City Country Club. Then a week after that, we head over to England. And then get this, when we get back, Frank, you head to the ocean course at Kiowa.
Yep.
Who are you, by the way? England, Kiowa. And then when we come back, we got Scotland. We're heading up to Manchester Lane Titleist Institute in July. I mean, the calendar is ridiculous. So stay tuned.
The only thing I haven't decided yet is if I'm bringing those clubs with me or not when I go to Kiowa. Because it's a bucket list course. So it's like, do you want to play that with rented clubs? But the other side of the coin is we're traveling super light and super quick just for the weekend for my wife's cousin's wedding. So it's like my wife and I could walk on with carry-ons, jump in an Uber, and get to the hotel. The other side of it is I could check the bag and bring the clubs, and you rent them.
Kiowa's going to have some nice clubs. I got to think you're going to have a decent round with them.
I would think so too, but it's just so hard, especially I've got so much confidence in my club. We've spent so much effort over the last 12 months molding and those clubs and just making them the way we want. And I can't even stress the level of confidence that gives you when you have the clubs.
It's huge.
It is. And
it's so huge.
I just wonder if it's going to work the other way, standing on that first tee box. And I'm just going to be thinking I guess, hey, if nothing else, it'll be a great mental exercise for me to get my head out of that.
Imagine you went out there and you fired it like a great round. I mean, I don't know. It's a tough call. I get it.
It's a tough call. I think it's going to be such a last minute decision. You won't believe. I think it's just going to be like one of those sleep on it the night before. And if I decide to bring them, I just bring them.
Do a Facebook poll in the group, yes or no.
Yeah, I should. But everybody's just going to tell me just to bring the clubs because they're not carrying them.
All right, we'll see.
We'll see. I will. I'll report back and let you guys know what I decide doing. But I tell you what, let's do a quick word from our sponsors, and then we're going to hop into how you guys can drop some more mid-range putts.
Yes, so let's do it. So the ShotScope V2, guys, it's a stat tracking system. It's an all-in-one watch, less than the price of a typical hour lesson with a pro. It's actually gotten cheaper, Frank, thanks to our friends at ShotScope. Get this. It's now $159 after our coupon code, and I'll get to that in a sec. No monthly fees. That's it. Like I said, I logged around last week. I got my dashboard here. Just want to give you an update. Here are my stats from last week's round. Get this. Average score in par threes was a 4.3. Not that great. Higher than my normal of 3.9. My par fours was a 5, which is down by 0.1. I mean, not much, but it shows that I went down than my season average. And then get this one, par fives average score last week. There was only 2 par fives on this course. It's 8.5.
Ooh.
So I think I triple bogeyed both or had a 9 on one of them or something. But yeah, things got out of control. There was a lot of water on that course. But on the plus side, I hit 28% greens versus my 19% season stat. Missed a lot of fairways, but it's great that I can get all this information after my round, dissect it just like this, and then know where to improve. So check it out, shotscope.com/Golficity. Use the coupon code GolficityV2 for the new price of $159. Like I said, most GPS watches without stat tracking, they're even more expensive than that. So check them out. That's shotscope.com/Golficity.
Yes, and let's take a quick second also to talk about the new Titleist Pro V1 and Pro V1X. Both have been redesigned top to bottom for more speed, more precision, and more consistency than ever before. You guys have heard us talk a little bit about them on the show. In fact, we did an entire episode with one of the key personnel there who's helping in designing the ball. But if you compare the two, and this is what a lot of you often, we get some emails about this, we get some other messages saying, which should I play? What is the difference? To simplify it as much as possible, the Pro V1 has a softer feel and a lower flight than the Pro V1X, and the Pro V1X has a higher flight with some more spin and a firmer feel. I actually was playing a little bit with the Pro V1X this past weekend it was a little bit windier, so I wanted to keep the flight a little bit lower, and it did feel good. Both models have that proven drop and stop greenside control, which when you guys feel it, oh man, you know it. And you've also got that lasting durability. I know a lot of people, some of the concerns that they had with some of the more premium balls is the price. If there's a durability concern, I'll tell you what, Mike, I hit one cart path on the fly with a drive and noticed only a very small scuff mark, which I'm impressed with for how soft that ball feels and how well it performed taking that hit. So, I know, Mike, you made the switch. You've seen your handicap drop. I've been using and experimenting with all of them. I love the entire line, that as well as the AVX, which you guys know I enjoy playing. And I played the Pro V1s at Crystal our last time out. So I've definitely been trying
yellows. Those are
the
great.
yellows. The yellows are really cool. And I find that I'm finding them better in like this, not so great weather. So easy to find on a cold, dark day. Check it out. Prove how good you can be. Tee up the new Pro V1 or Pro V1X on your next round. Okay, Mike, what do you say we talk about those mid-range putts? And you know what? I think
most putts are mid-range.
There's
so long range.
Exactly. There's so many that are, and it goes down to what we talked with Kevin Sprecher about, what we talked with Kyle Alderink on the show about. All of these top teaching professionals, they tend to find the same thing. They find that a lot of people who come to them are not pushing themselves out of their comfort zone when they practice, and that's a key reason why they feel much more frustrated out on the course versus when they're practicing or warming up. Mm-hmm. Case in point, we talked with Kyle about how most people feel very comfortable with their 7-iron because that's what they go to the range and they just hit it a whole bunch. But they don't, let's say, for example, hit their 3-wood terribly well because they rarely ever pull it out on the range and they don't hit it that often. They don't practice it. Similarly with putts, a lot of times we'll see people, you'll warm up before your round, and I've been guilty of this too. You practice a bunch of short range putts, you practice a bunch of long range putts, but then those in-betweeners just kind of get neglected. And then surprise, surprise, you get on the course, you get faced with these pretty often and you're just out of your comfort zone. It's just not something that you're able to really perform well with. And it can be a dramatic difference in score. Just let's say 2 or 3 mid-range, 8 to 10 footers dropping in a round is going to make a big difference in that scorecard, because it's going to save you that stroke. So it's an important one. And if you really think about it, you break those putts down, you got 3 basic categories: short, mid-range, and long. And the goal for at least the 2 extremities, it's pretty obvious. With the really long putts, the goal is just to get it close. The make percentage on a long putt, even on the PGA Tour, is quite low. The other side of that coin, the very short putts, they're like, you got to make. You got to be able to make those 3 footers. And that's why we've talked before about nailing those down, like practicing them, hitting them 10 out of 10, 50 out of 50, 100 out of 100, whatever it may be, to get those really locked in. And because if you miss those, you're going to be disappointed. But then where does those mid-range putts fall, in this category? Because no matter how much you work on them, you're never going to make them all. Okay. But if you can just, increase that make percentage just a little bit, you're going to see a dramatic improvement. So the mental approach, first of all, to these mid-range putts is going to be somewhere between those two. You want to give yourself a chance of making them. Whereas like with those really long range putts, usually our goal is just to get it close enough for a tap in, or at least for a putt that we've got a very high percentage of make. But you want to be able to give yourself, a chance to make them in this case, but you also want to completely eliminate that possibility of a 3 putt. That should be an important goal. I mean, you're 10 feet out. You want to make sure you're not 3 putting from there, 10, 12 feet out. So you got to give yourself a really strong chance of it dropping, with the worst case being an easy tap in leave. So if you can do that, that's really important. And when we talked with Kevin Sprecher, he said a very similar type of thing. He said those types of putts are where a lot of that scoring happens. He talked to us about how he doesn't see a lot of people practicing those. And he said, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but the way I remember it in that lesson was, he said he wanted to see a lot more of our practice time on mid-range putts. So, because he said, sure, those long range putts, you can practice your leg, you can practice your leave, and It's always a good idea to hit a couple of those before you get out, before you tee off on a round, just to get a feel for the speed of the greens that day. But in reality, you're not going to drop more than, let's say, a 30-foot plus putt. You're not going to drop more than 5 to 10% of those. So no matter, you can put a ton of work in there, and it's not necessarily going to translate into the score as much as a mid-range. So he said, if you can start to really hammer out 8, 10, 12 footers where you're just making those putts, that's where you're going to see like a really, a great, a great improvement in the score. And then there's other things that come into play. Of course, we can work our way backwards. Proximity comes into play. Sure. You've got to give yourself more of those chances, because if your chipping and approach game is not great, you're not going to see a lot of these mid-range putts. Most likely you're going to see a lot of long putts, and then hopefully you're good enough with those long putts that you're not leaving yourself mid-range putts. My hope would be if you're every time you're 40 feet from the pin, you're at least giving yourself within that 5-foot range on that putt. That would be my hope. If not, obviously everybody's game is different. If you're at that point, that's something you're going to have to work on. But as you work on and start to improve things like your approach game, your chipping game, my hope would be that most of your first putts are going to be somewhere in that range or closer, that 8 to 12 feet or closer. So once you get to that point, if you can start dropping those 1 putts, you're going to see some real dramatic, improvements in handicap.
Yeah, it's a good point. You say that because for me, I see my short game or my 100 and in game improving as a result of, the things we're learning with Kevin, the new equipment being fitted. So that game is kind of tightening up a little bit, which is putting me more into the mid range as opposed to the 30 footers or like on the fringe. And I got a prayer of a putt. And my problem is I'm not practicing these mid-range putts. So I am doing exactly what you said. I'm doing the long rangers to practice lag till, to kind of look cool on the putting range, or I'm putting it within a foot, look cool to myself. And then I'm doing like the 3 or 4 footers just to build some confidence before going to the first tee. But I don't find myself doing these mid-range. It's actually so funny we're talking about this, because I'm thinking about it. I'm saying, my wedge game is getting so much better. I'm finding myself in a situation with a lot more mid-range putts, and I'm just not practicing them.
Dude, and look, we talk about it often on this podcast. We say a big part of what we're trying to do here is just bring awareness to things. And sometimes it just takes thinking about it and talking about it to realize, right, I'm not doing that. And then you start to realize and put those 2 and 2 together, like, oh, it just so happens that the areas of my game where I'm not very good are also the things I'm neglecting and not realizing it. Speaking of neglecting, my short game right now is garbage. It's garbage. It needs, let me tell you something. Some people even had commented, and they're like, Frank, you got a pretty decent swing I see in the videos. Like, how are you, still like a double-digit handicap? How are you a 12, whatever? And I'm like, dude, you don't see my short game right now. The short game is where it happens.
Where are you struggling right now? Around the greens?
I'm struggling 50 yards and in. So I'm struggling. Let's put it this way: 50 yards, 2 chips. I'm starting to putt well. I'm starting to hit, some of my wedge shots, that a little bit further, but anything less than let's say like a full 60-degree wedge, where I'm starting to get those half shots and things like that. And I know why. It's because I'm not practicing it. It's feel. Around the greens, it's all feel. It takes time. You got to get out there and work on it. And my game, it's always a struggle this time of year, because no matter what, I've been away from it. Sure, I'm going in the simulator still right now just to keep my swing going. We talk about the importance of that. I've been doing that through the winter. I'm putting at home, but it's very difficult to practice 30-yard shots and things like that in the simulator. It's very hard to practice feel when you're hitting into a screen that's 12 feet in front of you. So I know this will come with time. I know it's a reality, but it's, again, I'm just got to be real with myself and be aware of it. Like, dude, that's the area where I need improvement. But this happens to everybody. I even hear, as we ramp up for YouTube Golf Day, right? I'm hearing some of these other guys, these guys who are tremendous golfers, far better than we are. Piers and Andy from Me and My Golf and some of the other guys, they're like, I got to get out there and practice. Because they're instructing and they're working on things like that all day. It's the same with them. They may understand and conceptualize the execution of a certain shot, but unless you're out there doing it, you kind of get out of your rhythm. So it's a matter of getting out there and doing it. So I'm really working on that right now. I want to find a area where I can work on that short game, that 50 yards or so. I'm hoping I can do that at the local range, and I'm trying to find different areas. But I may even, my first couple of rounds of the season, I may, drop a couple extra balls and play a couple different looks so I can get used to that. Like, that's what I'm trying to do right now, is just practice it. But I'm digressing a little bit, but it was a big part of my round this last time out when I played last weekend with my daughter. I shot 89, a sloppy 89.
With a garbage short game, you put up an 89?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I'm hitting certain shots really well. I was moving the ball off the tee well. I'm striking my irons well, but there was a lot of areas where I just wasted shots close, not chipping it close enough to give myself a shot at making a putt, not doing, and just, it adds up, one stroke on every hole, that adds up quick. That's 18 strokes. You know what I mean? If you just, in some way, just don't take advantage of one shot on each hole, it adds up quick. And a lot of mine were those 20 yards out, you know what I mean? And I'm trying to hit it, and I end up putting the, 30 feet from the pin when I should be putting it 5 to 8 feet. You get what I'm saying?
Couple of classic D cells too, or what?
I'm working on the D cell. It's more so feel. It's feel. Okay. It's being able to have a club in my hand and know that I can put this 30 yards. It's an exercise that I want to do. And you see the pros do it, and they're tremendous at it. They call out a number and then they have to hit it that far. Have you ever seen that? I've even seen, like, there's some apps and stuff that'll randomize it. There's somebody had introduced me to a practice app or something like that kind of takes you out of your comfort zone, and it'll just like randomly come up with a number. It'll be like 59. And you got to hit it 59 yards, which I think is a great practice. But that's this type of thing. It's feel. I got to work on it. I got to develop it.
Hey, listen, not to can stay off topic. Just real quick though, I was thinking about this actually just yesterday, and it goes to this point. We step up to a 300-yard par four. Obviously, I'm going for it, and I'm going to end up with a 275-yard drive, and I'll have 25 yards off from the green.
Mm-hmm.
My game as well from 25 yards is pretty bad. I probably skull the ball over the green or chunk it and come up short because that part of my game I'm not confident with. So I'm going to try to bring this game back. I mean, on that same scenario, why not just go 9-iron and play those full swings? I know this is a completely different topic. Maybe we'll bring this back up later on, but I'm going to try that over the next couple of weeks leading up to YouTube Golf Day.
Okay.
And just see if there's a difference, because if I'm not confident in that 20 yards and in like you, then maybe I'll change my game around. So it's a 150 in on that. You know what I mean?
No doubt. I mean, we see the even at the highest level, the PGA Tour, they will work their way backwards with their leaves of saying, I'm going to.
But is that wrong to think of? Like, should I
look,
setting my
to a certain degree, I always say, rather than always work around it, practice the areas where you need to improve. Okay. Rather than restructuring your whole game. In the short term, I think it's fine.
Like fix,
for short term, you can restructure and say, look, that shot is not a shot I'm comfortable with. I'm going to play some shots that I am comfortable with. But in the interim, I'm going to work on that shot on the range or on the practice facility until I get comfortable. So that, because you don't want to get in a position where you're always taking more distance out. Distance is going to be your advantage if you can use it.
Your advantage.
But even at the highest level, the pros are using that if they're saying, okay, their difference might be, do I leave it 100 yards out or 120 yards out? They're making that type of decision because they might be more comfortable approaching it from one or the other. But I don't think they're going to say, do I leave it 150 yards versus 25? That's not going to happen.
I step up to a 300-yard par four with a 9-iron.
Then we just got to go home. We just got to, we got to call it a day.
Never mind.
But what I'm saying is, like, on, let's say, a par five or something like that, if you were to say, I want to work my way backwards, I want to leave a 100-yard shot versus leaving a 70-yard shot because I'm more comfortable with hitting my 52 than my 60 from the fairway. Those are the types of things that make smart decisions. Mm-hmm. But I think it really just comes down to practicing it and working on those areas. And that's what's going to be my key focus, because I know too. And I'm nervous about YouTube Golf Day. Cause I mean, we don't go into these things with any type of, overinflation of what our game is. We tell people like, this is what we, our level. So it's not like anything would be like shocking if like I missed a shot here and there. People know that's our game. But I know if there's anything that's going to be embarrassing to me, it's going to be those short game shots, because I tend to screw those up a lot worse than some other things. I make just stupid mistakes, and I know it takes work. So that's going to be a big goal for me. But speaking of which, like I said, the reason I got into that is because I'm saying that ultimately you have to work your way towards getting your more of these mid-range chances with your putts. And a lot of that can be looking at your other areas of the games and try to find out what is the reason why I'm not getting there. And that's where certain tools, like whether it be shot scope or whatever type of, shot or stat tracking you have, you can start to look for these holes in your game and say like, okay, I know this is the reason I don't have that. But
right.
So one big thing, and one point that we can't emphasize enough, is speed control, especially from these distances. It's great to hit that putt online. But the accuracy, it's really only useful if you roll it at the right pace. And we talked about this with Kevin Sprecher. A lot of what he went into, which is stuff that went beyond what I'm used to even understanding of speed control, was also having to do with stroke and how you hit it, and how, like, that dispersion on the face and making sure you're rolling the ball and things like that. For me, what I was doing and what I found when we were on the Sam Putt Lab was that I was hitting up on the ball a little bit too much. And then these are different types of things. If you hit up on it too much, you're going to get that ball kind of bouncing a little bit. It might be some more minuscule, like you can't see it with your eye, but that's for something like the Sam Putt Lab will. He has me starting to de-loft that club a little bit and then just hit up a little bit. So I'm not hitting up quite as much. So I'm getting a nice roll without any type of bounce. And I'm taking these variables out that help with that, ultimately with that speed control. But you can really work on this by just putting that practice in, especially before you get on a round. Get a feel for the mid-range putts. Don't just hit the long legs and the short putts. Get a feel for the speed, understand that speed, and try to really lock it in. I still think speed is more important than even break and direction. Because everything. Yeah, if you've got the right speed, you're always going to give yourself a shot, and at the very least, you're going to be close to the hole. Another thing that you can do is play more break. It's the low side of the hole. You guys have heard us talk about this before. The low side is sometimes referred to as the amateur side. And the reason for is that amateurs tend to underread their putts. I know this is a generality, but it is something, we've kind of like looked into it and dove into some of the information out there on it. And we're getting more and more information as you've got these different stat tracking companies, whether it be ShotScope, Arcos, 18 Birdies has a little bit of it. All these different ones, they're starting to compile so much information that we're able to use that and just look at some of the different things on the whole, different golfers are doing at different levels. And one thing that we see is that amateurs end up with a lot of low side misses because they're under reading it. So if you feel like you're constantly seeing your putts slide by on the low side, and again, this is where it's about bringing that awareness. Sometimes we just get frustrated that we miss the putts, but we're not thinking enough about those misses because each miss is a lesson. It may be frustrating, but it's a lesson. It's something you can learn. So if you could start to see and start to take note of, are you generally missing it in one, like on the low side? And if you are, it means you're not putting enough break into it. So, if you generally speaking, put a little bit more break into your putts, one thing you can help avoid is when you tend to play a minimal break, like not quite enough break, you tend to try to force the ball to hold that line, and you wind up hitting your putts a little harder than you should, and you end up blowing by the hole. And that's where I know a lot of us, we get a little bit wary. I think where we're wary is this idea of like, did I get the right read? And that's why we don't play enough break. And sometimes subconsciously, instead, we just try to kind of power it through the break. But that's where kind of those disastrous three putts can start to happen. So, if you can kind of play plenty of break, you can afford a little bit less pace, and you can let that ball, run out of speed right around the cup. So sometimes that ball is going to drop. Other times, at least you'll have a stress-free tap in, rather than, I said, powering through the break. And then now you've got kind of that knee knocker 2-3 footer. Otherwise, you're staring down what's possibly could be a 3 putt there. So I think that's where those areas, if you can just work a little bit more break in, experiment with working a little bit more break and a little bit less pace, see where that goes for you.
I forgot to tell you, speaking of, this has nothing to do with playing more break, but in regards to putting and Kevin Sprecher, what I took away from that last week's round, I found myself actually, Kevin cured my pull. He 2 little tips with the club head and and my grip. Every single putt was tracking, Frank. Everything was on target, straight at the hole, but everything was about I probably left like 5 or 6 putts 2 to 6 inches short on line. So what does that tell me? I think my putter is too light. Remember, Kevin said your putter's kind of light. My ping was a lot heavier than the Scotty, so I may have to, get some weights there. But I've seen such a huge difference from just those 2 takeaways. And, I had a problem with missing on the low side. I mean, this whole thing, and I didn't know if I need to play more break or hit the ball harder. I mean, I was just a mess out there with putting. So I took Kevin's things and put it together. And dude, I don't know, man. I'm excited about where this putting game is currently at. And that was on punch greens in April. So let's see.
Look, I mean, part of that problem could have been that they were punched. You were leaving them a little bit short because they were so slow. I wouldn't make too many heavy adjustments yet until you've got a couple more rounds on some real greens. But I think it's incredibly promising. If you're saying you're only leaving them a couple inches short, I mean, sometimes
I was impressed. I impressed myself. Yeah,
dude. Sometimes the fix is just aim 6 inches past the cup, and your whole problem solved right there,
Yeah.
But the good news, with the Scotty, because it's got those adjustable weights, if you do find that it's the weighting that's hurting your distance feel, you can just switch it up and put a little, but But yeah, I'd say it's definitely promising getting that ball online and getting that speed close enough to correct that it's only talking about a couple inches. You know, if we were talking about a foot or, foot and a half, then we'd be like, okay, something's wrong. Something's really wrong.
Yeah.
But if it's just that little bit, sometimes just the adjustment, they aim a little bit past the cup and let it go.
All right, we'll see.
Something we mentioned earlier, another point here and another area where you guys can really dive in is as we talk about thinking ahead. A big part of making these mid-range putts is going to be leaving yourself a smart position in which to attack that cup. And by doing so, and one way to do so, and you've heard us talk about this before, is strategize your shot into the green a little bit more. This shot could be a wedge shot. It could be a chip shot, whatever it may be. A lot of times we just look at that flag, lock in and go for it. But if you can kind of think a little bit one step past that, take a little bit of a survey of the green and try to keep yourself on the low side so that you can putt uphill, it's going to really help your ability to make those putts. A downhill mid-range putt can get a little bit tricky. I mean, that's something that downhill is going to force you to often, have to be a little bit more conservative. You're worried about blowing it past. Whereas an uphill putt, you can put a little bit more on it. You can take a little bit more of the breakout. You can have that luxury. So just by simply thinking about your putt before you even get to the green, it will make a big improvement, a big change for you. I think I did this for the longest time. It's only very recently that I've started to try to think of it ahead. For the longest time, I wouldn't even think about my putt or anything to do with it until I was on the dance floor.
Of course. I'm saying who would.
Right. But that's the thing. At a higher level of golf, they are thinking ahead. It's similar to this. It's similar to like if you play pool or billiards, right? Really good players are thinking about where that cue ball is going to end up after the shot. Newer players are just thinking about just making that shot. That's all they're thinking about. And then wherever the cue ball ends up after that, they're going to kind of readdress and rework from there. So yeah, I mean, it'll work here and there, but you're really not taking full advantage of it. The better players are the guys, like I said, who are going to think, okay, how do I hit this to reposition that cue ball so that I can make the next thing? Similar type of thing. As you're approaching a green, a better golfer is going to start to look at that green. They're going to look at the general slope. Which way does it slope? And they're going to start to play it and err on the side. And I'm not talking about purposely leaving it dramatically short so you can putt uphill. I'm talking about making slight adjustments. Like let's say the pin is 120 out, right? And it slopes uphill, away, sort of like some from the front to back, it's going uphill. That's where you may want to say err on the side of just under 150 versus just over. Sure. I'd rather hit it 140, 48, 149, then hit it 150, 152. Now I know that's a lot of control, but I'm just saying, as long as you have that thought in your mind, it's better to be putting uphill. So as you get ready for that approach shot, take a look at the general slope of the green, decide which side would be a better target. If the green's relatively flat, or you're playing a short approach to the wedge, you can usually just go right after that flag, but it comes into play more so with those longer approaches, and just, especially the severely sloped putting surfaces that can get us in a lot of trouble. And we're going to be looking at some wild putting surfaces when we get over to Scotland.
Oh yeah.
So these are some things takeaways we can do for ourselves, but that's what I mean. If you can just kind of like get that thought process in, it can really help you. The last tip would be holding your head steady, trying, and I think you can go beyond head, just trying to keep that body steady in general. And there's so much we can get into with this. It can be its own show, so I won't get too deep into it. For me, I've been really focusing on keeping my lower body as steady as possible. But any type of that swaying movement during your putting stroke, it's most likely going to translate to, a decreased accuracy, especially as a speed accuracy, because you're introducing some of these other variables. One thing that Kevin helped me with, especially for solidifying my base, was a very simple, as I'm standing there, just kind of like pushing my knees out a little bit. If you just notice that, it's almost like, you ever see that machine at the gym where you can put your legs and it just like, you can push out on them, or whatever.
Yes.
I don't know how else to describe this.
Leg press?
But yeah, well, no, not like a push straight out. I mean, it's like side to side, right
like
and
side.
left, you know?
Yep.
So anyway, just envisioning pushing your knees out to the right and to the left, just that little bit of like it's like a reverse squeeze. Instead of thinking you're squeezing your knees together, think of going the other way. Mm-hmm. He said, just doing that a little bit just kind of solidifies the base. And that really did help me. And that's one of the things I put into my pre-putt routine. But something like that can really help. And if you can get a solid base and keep that kind of like the head solid and just work on that pendulum motion, you're taking some variables out that can often cause differences in speed, especially from this distance.
Big time. And that was another thing that Kevin taught me, that keep my head down during the putt. If you pick your head up, only bad things can happen, because now your shoulders are moving. If your shoulders are moving, now your arms are moving.
Yes.
So what's the point? And it's funny because that was the last tip that Pro taught me at Meaty 18 Birdies Media Day in the city when we won the trip to Bay Hill.
Yeah.
He taught me that same thing, and I ended up making the putt to win the prize, you know, and then I meet Kevin, you know, fast forward 2 years later, and he tells me the same thing. So definitely a solid tip. Keep that.
It's so true. Like as soon as that head moves, it causes the shoulders to move, and then everything starts moving, and then that it's that fluidity. If there's too much fluidity, that's where you start to get into, again, like I said, variables that it doesn't take much. When we're talking about 10 to 12 foot putts, it does not take much of a change to miss a putt. You know what I mean? We're talking about, what was it that Kevin said? Like 1 degree of the face difference at 10 feet was like, it translated to like 4 inches.
2 inches. Was it 2?
I don't remember what the distance was. I'd have to go back and look at it. But it just shows you that the slightest things can make those differences. So
it's incredible.
One tip, if you are finding that you're having trouble with this, if you're having trouble with a little bit of a head movement, you can work on focusing on a specific spot on the golf ball through the stroke. It could be the number that's printed on the ball. It could be a mark that you made. Whatever it is, if you keep those eyes super focused and steady, it tends to help. The head will follow suit. But whatever it may be, again, if you can even just bring awareness to it, a lot of us have been taking advantage of our smartphones and taping ourselves swinging. I think a good thing that not enough people do, tape yourself putting. You saw it during the lesson we did with Kevin Sprecher. As we were on the Sam Putt Lab, which is, you know, measuring every movement of the club, he was also standing behind us and videotaping with his phone, because sometimes it's just as simple as being able to relook at it and see what you're doing that makes a difference. So grab one of your playing partners and be like, hey, could you mind just videotaping my swing? Maybe do from face on and down the line. And then you've got a resource you can look back at. And a lot of these phones now, they shoot in slow motion, or you can kind of like drag it back and forth with your finger and just kind of like pause it, and you can take a look, and you'll be surprised what you discover just by seeing that stroke. So it's something that I've used to my advantage before, and I try to go back and look at some of these different things, and if nothing else, it helps you too. If you do work with an instructor, you can bring it to them and be like, this is what I notice in my swing. Do you notice a similar thing? And don't be surprised if you do work with an instructor, if they pull out their phone and they start taping you, because it is such a powerful tool for that.
Yeah, you're telling me.
Yeah. But if there's nothing else, you know, one thing I can wrap this kind of up with, it's that we've quickly learned the value of a putting lesson. If in general, I mean, these are the tips that we wanted to address for the generalities, like I said, for mid-range putts, the things that can kind of help everybody if you focus on them. But putting is just such an important part of the game. Don't overlook it. If you're really looking to improve and you want to just kind of go that extra mile, start looking around for somebody who can do a putting lesson. Unlike swing lessons, I don't feel like you have to do it too often or too many. I feel like if you can just get 1 or 2 lessons that really get you on the right path, and then just work on that, with your putting stroke, it's gonna be a major part of your game. Look at what Kevin said in that video. He said he's saving people 5 to 7 strokes around. There is no other club or stroke in the bag that is going to save you that much in just one thing.
Yeah, you know, how about that?
Maybe the second closest thing would be driver. You know, if you can dramatically improve your driver and hit a lot more fairways, but that putting stroke, I think I get this question a lot where people say, you know, if it's order priority, because it costs money, you know, if I'm on a budget, it's order priority. Where do I put my money first? putting lessons is going way up on my list lately. I think it's an important one. So
yeah, I agree with you there.
So, all right. So good stuff. So, hope you guys are able to drop some more of those mid-range putts. As always, if you have some of tips of your own, if there's something that worked for you, if there's a particular drill, if there's something you want to share it with us. Share it in the Facebook group. It's a great place to keep the conversation going for those types of things. You can also tag us on any of the social networks. We love seeing that. You can message us and we shout those out often here. A quick reminder, if anybody who hasn't checked it out yet, make sure you check out the Golficity app. It's available for iOS and Android. It is completely free, and you get all your best Golficity content there. We've got 5, 6, I don't know, maybe 7 years worth of instructional articles on there. We've got all the podcasts. I know a lot of you have messaged us saying you recently discovered the show. A great way to go back and listen to old episodes is in the app. And we've recently even introduced a new feature in the app where you can favorite certain things. So if there's something you wanted to rework on, re-listen to, if there was a tip that we talked about in one of the podcasts you want to serve as a reminder, you can add it to your favorites list and you can jump back to it at any time. And like I said, the best part is it's entirely free. There is not a dime cost to this thing. So check it out. Let us know what you think. We're always working on improving that. And we figure it's a great way that we can kind of share these and the videos as well. And it also, the app will give you, if you turn on notifications, the app will give you notifications when new videos and new podcasts drop, and you can play them all right there in the app. Doesn't matter what platform. All right, Mike, you got anything else, or are you just excited for Skyway?
Dude, episode 266 is in the books. I will meet you at Skyway. Bring your A game. We're going to play match play, and we're going to have some competition. We don't normally do competition, but let's do it. Let's
do a little match play. I'll bring that. I'll bring my A game, and I'll bring about 17 cameras as always.
Same.
So we can have a little fun and shoot a nice vlog for you guys.
And 17 golf balls each.
Is there a lot of water? I mean, is that a stupid question? Because it's like right on the water, right?
That's a stupid question, but there is a lot of water. I mean, there isn't a lot of water at Liberty National. You would think there would be.
True.
But I think from what I saw from the website, there's some water there. So.
All right. Well, we'll get out there and we'll have fun with it.
All right, man.
All right, guys. You can get the show notes by going to golficity.com/episode 266. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see everybody again next week.